You always start strong, full of motivation, full of energy, full of plans. And for a moment, it feels real. This time feels different. This time you'll change. This time you'll stay committed. But then a few days pass, maybe a week, and slowly you begin slipping. You miss one day, then another, and before you realize it, you've stopped completely, again. And every time it happens, you feel worse, not because you failed, but because it keeps repeating. And eventually, you start asking yourself, what's wrong with me? Why can't I stay consistent? Why do I always quit? Why does it feel so easy at the beginning and so impossible later? Most people think consistency is about discipline, but that's only part of the truth. The deeper truth is this: consistency is emotional, not just practical, because staying consistent means staying committed even when your emotions change. And emotions always change. That's the part nobody talks about. At the beginning, everything feels exciting. New goals, new routines, new possibilities. Your brain loves novelty. Novelty creates dopamine, and dopamine creates momentum. But novelty fades, always. And when it fades, what remains is reality, effort, boredom, repetition, discomfort. This is where most people quit. Not because the goal stopped mattering, but because the feeling changed. And many people are addicted to acting based on feeling. If they feel motivated, they act. If they don't, they stop. But feelings are unstable. They come and go. And if your habits depend on emotion, your life will always feel unstable. That's why consistency requires something deeper than motivation. It requires identity. Because when your behavior is connected to identity, it becomes less negotiable. A person who says, "I'm trying to work out," acts differently than a person who says, "I am someone who takes care of my body." One is temporary, the other is identity. And identity is powerful, because people protect who they believe they are. That's why your self-image matters so much. If deep down you see yourself as inconsistent, your actions will eventually match that belief. Even if you start strong, your identity will pull you back. That's why changing your habits without changing your identity often fails. The old version of you keeps returning, not because it's stronger, because it's familiar. And the brain loves familiarity, even when familiarity keeps you stuck. Another reason consistency feels hard is because people make the process too heavy. They try to change everything at once. Wake up earlier, read every day, go to the gym, eat clean, meditate, journal, quit bad habits, become a new person overnight. It sounds good, but it overwhelms the nervous system, and overwhelmed people quit, because big changes create big resistance. That's why simplicity matters. Small actions, small wins, small commitments. The goal is not intensity. The goal is repetition, because repetition builds trust, and trust builds discipline. Think about this. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you strengthen self-respect. But every time you break it, you weaken trust. And many people don't realize their biggest problem isn't lack of discipline, it's broken trust with themselves. They've disappointed themselves so many times, they no longer believe their own promises. That creates an invisible resistance, a quiet voice saying, "You'll quit anyway." And that voice becomes stronger every time you stop. That's why rebuilding consistency often starts with rebuilding trust. Make smaller promises, keep them, repeat them, not because they change your life instantly, but because they change how you see yourself, and that changes everything. Consistency is less about force and more about reducing friction. Make the habit easy, make it obvious, make it simple. If reading feels hard, read 1 page. If working out feels hard, do 5 minutes.
If journaling feels hard, write one sentence. The goal is not to impress yourself. The goal is to stay connected to the habit, because staying connected matters more than doing it perfectly. Perfection destroys consistency. People miss one day and decide they failed, but missing one day means nothing. Quitting does. The problem is not falling off. The problem is believing falling off means starting over.
It doesn't. You continue immediately, without drama, without shame. Because shame often makes people quit longer. They feel guilty. They avoid the habit. The gap grows bigger, and returning feels harder. That's why self-compassion matters. Not softness, recovery. You are going to fail sometimes. That's normal. You are human. Consistency is not perfection. It is returning again and again. That is what separates people who change from people who stay the same. Not flawless discipline, the ability to come back. And maybe that's what you need right now. Not more pressure, not a perfect system, not a huge life overhaul. Maybe you simply need to make things smaller, simpler, lighter,
and more honest. Because the truth is, you do not need to transform your life in 1 week. You only need to prove to yourself that you can trust yourself again. One habit, one promise, one day at a time. That is how consistency is built. Quietly, slowly, powerfully. And over time, those small repeated actions become identity. And identity becomes destiny. So if you've been struggling lately, if you keep quitting, if you feel stuck in the same cycle, it does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you are broken. It simply means your system needs to change. Smaller steps, clearer habits, stronger identity, less pressure, more repetition. Because the person you want to become is not built through motivation. They are built through consistency. And consistency begins the moment you stop trying to be perfect and start learning how to return.